Welcome, Totem Pole Nation, Lambo Sports. We got a lot of things to talk about. We're going to be recapping week 3 of college football. The first game we're going to talk about is South Carolina versus Georgia, ladies and gentlemen. That game was a low-scoring game. We thought South Carolina was going to pull off the upset, but you don't doubt University of Georgia. We've seen Georgia with pretty slow starts last year despite the easy schedule. Last year, they started off slow against Missouri. This year, they started off slow against South Carolina. They're a legit SEC team. Even though they struggled, they lost. They were down 14-0. But they shut out South Carolina in the second half, and Georgia was able to run the ball like normal. The final score of that game was 24-14. Carson Beck, all of a sudden, I guess he steps up and does what he does. Georgia defense, not surprising, but Spencer Rattler, like I said, only complete QBR-wise is only 72. He was 22 of 42 for 256. He had 2 interceptions, and he had a touchdown. Their run game was just bad. It's not good. I mean, he was their leading rusher, which is horrible. But, I mean, I thought South Carolina came in with a good game plan, but when you throw 2 interceptions, it just doesn't work. Carson Beck, like I said, a new starting quarterback. He was 27-35 for 269. He didn't throw a touchdown pass, but Georgia scored on defense, and their running back, Dejon Edwards, had 20 carries for 118 yards and 1 touchdown. As a team, they rushed for 189 yards. So what are your thoughts on this game? And South Carolina goes down to 1-2 after losing to UNC in the first game. And now Georgia. It's a very tough schedule for South Carolina. And with Georgia, are they going to be undefeated with that easy schedule?
Yeah, I think they'll still be undefeated. They'll make the college football playoff, and we'll see what happens from there. You mentioned that they had started slow in a few games in the past, but I was never really concerned during those games that, oh my God, Georgia might lose this. This was the first game, in my opinion, that we've seen a legitimate weakness, the first sign of weakness. Not saying that they have many weaknesses, but this is the first sign of legitimate weakness that we've seen from Georgia in 2 years. I mean, they've had slow starts before, but nothing to where I was they might lose this game. But being down 14-3 at the half, I was pretty, concerned for them. If they lose, it doesn't affect my day-to-day, but concerned for them for sure. Georgia started the second half, though, with a 2.5-minute drive for a quick touchdown. South Carolina's offense just stalled in the second half, and the defense really played their asses off. They played as good or as well as they could have to keep them in the game. You can only contain the Georgia run game, and I think they did a decent job of containing the pass game, but 250 is still 250. But the matchups don't line up. They've got 5 stars all across the O-line. They've got 5 stars all across the D-line. Not saying South Carolina is bad or anything, but they really played up to the competition in this game, at least in the first half. Both of Rattler's interceptions came in the fourth quarter in a 10-point game. So, they had every opportunity. They had drives going, and Spencer just gave it away. And that's what we talked about before week 1. That's what we talked about last week when we were previewing this game. Spencer cannot be the reason that they lose. And obviously he wasn't the reason, but I think he was a very, very large factor, and that's not a hot take or anything, as to why they couldn't finish this game off. 2 fourth-quarter interceptions is the opposite of clutch. This is a guy who 3 years ago in mock drafts was going early first round, and now he's playing himself out of an NFL job. And he did that last year too. He did it week 1 against UNC, and he's just continuing to bury himself with poor play. I expected Georgia to win. I think you did too. But Shane Beamer, all credit to him. He had a great game plan. The defense played as well as they could, limiting a Georgia team who piles on points every other week to 24 points. And 118 yards on the ground is a good game for a running back. But like we've seen Georgia running backs go crazy. We've seen, back in the Stetson Bennett days, like quarterbacks play super well. And like Carson played well, but he didn't throw a touchdown. So, all credit to the defense of South Carolina for doing as much as they can to keep their offense in a position to go win the game. And Spencer Rattler just fell short. It's really all it is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't too much in this game. It was low scoring. We thought it was going to be a blowout, but like I said, Georgia is going to be Georgia. South Carolina, like I said, it's not going to be very easy for them going forward. Like I said, they're 1-2, so they're sneaking into playoff hopes is not well. On their next 3 games is Mississippi State, which got blown out by LSU. So they're looking for some revenge, and then they play Tennessee. And then they play Florida. So it's not very easy for those teams. For Georgia, they play UAB, Auburn, and Kentucky. So like I said, they got a real easy schedule for this one. But South Carolina, they got to make changes on that O-line. That O-line is just not the answer. It's not it. They need a running back. Could we please let South Carolina just run the ball? Because you can't have your quarterback be the leading rusher. So the run game is just stalled. It's been stalled for 3 weeks. Now, I understand – it's week 3. I'm not panicking on them. It doesn't affect my day-to-day, but it's like, come on. We can't expect him to throw the ball 42 times and expect to win games. It doesn't work. All right. It's not the Oregon offense. We can get away with that. It's the South Carolina. All right. They ain't been good before he got there. Or they were consistent, but not as good as they were now. But next game I want to talk about, which was a scary game. Boston College and Florida State. I watched that game. It was scary. Now, Florida State did struggle in the first quarter. I thought Boston College came up with a good game plan, keep the ball away from Florida State. But the penalties was just insane. They had 11 penalties in the first half based off just, false starts and the snap count and just simple stuff that you work on in practice. Snap counts, going on 2, going on 3. I don't know what Boston College is doing. I thought they had a good game plan going in against Florida State. Florida State struggled, but they found a way at the end of the second quarter to pull off, take the lead. Jordan Travis did get hurt. I'm not sure if it was elbow, his wrist, or shoulder. That's going to affect them against when they play Clemson next week. But for this game, it was 31-10. By the third quarter, I cut it off, and then all of a sudden it was 31-29. Boston College was on the way to coming back until they got a face mask penalty, which led to the 18th penalty of the game, which was 15 yards, and then all of a sudden Florida State was able to pull off the victory. The time possession was great by 7 minutes, was 33-26, but when you have 18 penalties for 131 yards, you're not winning the game. And Florida State only had 5. So 11 in the first half doesn't really work. What's the good and negative about this game? Like, I think Florida State's great, but they almost blew this game. And I think Boston College, they have potential. I like their quarterback. But what's the positives and negatives of this Florida State Boston College game?
Well, I mean, the negatives for Florida State is that their defense just seemed to forget how to play football in the second half. Boston College scored first, and then they only scored 3 more points for the rest of the half. And then, they went and scored 19 unanswered in the late in the third quarter and then the entirety of the fourth. Thomas Castellanos, 305 yards. He did throw a pick, but he matched it with a touchdown. The running game from the quarterback as well, 95 yards on the ground with another touchdown. The running back, not a great yards per carry game. He had 21 carries for 64 yards, but he added 1 on the ground. They got the ball to 8 different receivers. So Boston College had a great game plan for a team that was predicted to finish in like the bottom 3 teams of the ACC. And they came out and just played up to the competition. They didn't, I'm not going to say that Florida played down to their competition, but they didn't look, for the number 3 team in the country, it didn't look too convincing to me. Jordan Travis is Jordan Travis. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But if you hurt something in your arm, it's going to impact the game. And he only had 212 passing touchdowns. They only threw the ball 24 times, which is pretty surprising to me considering that they only had 128 rushing yards on, like majority of their rushing yards came off of like a couple big plays. And besides that, like Troy Benson, 12 carries for 38 yards. That's not getting anything done. Jordan Travis did his thing on the ground. That's fine. But, like the running game wasn't as convincing as I would like it to be when the O-line, D-line matching up is way lopsided towards Florida State. When it just comes to talent and ability, I think Florida State's O-line should have been able to handle that D-line, and they really didn't handle them as well as I would have liked to see. They lost 2 fumbles. Florida State did. That you can't do that, especially against a lesser opponent. You can't be turning the ball over. Besides that, I just want to give props to Boston College really for playing a hell of a game and keeping it entertaining. You said you turned the game off and then you turned it back on, and it's almost an upset, which seemed to be the theme of the week. We're near upsets or upsets in general, like we just talked about earlier. That's really all I have on it. It was just a very entertaining game at the end, and props to Boston College for not looking like a bottom tier ACC team.
Yeah, the next team we're going to talk about is Virginia Tech because they are bottom tier. They got smacked by Rutgers. It was very close to the fourth quarter. It was only a 5-point game, and then all of a sudden, they just spread away. They lost 35-16. Rutgers is a former head coach in Greg Schiano, who was, I think under Belichick for a couple of years, a former NFL coach. They're physical. They ran the ball. They have a dual threat quarterback than we do. But it just came down to inexperience. The Rutgers quarterback is great, but there was some good and there was some bad. Grant Wells didn't play. Thank God he didn't play. I don't think we had a chance anyway. I think Kyron Drones made some very, very good throws. But it just comes down to that damn run defense and just not – I don't feel like we have any damn heart when we're on the field because all of a sudden we get close and then we just let it – it went from a 5-point game to, a 17, 18-point game, which, it got worse. Plus, we were down like 17-3, 21-3. It was not good for us. What's wrong with Virginia Tech? And next week they play Marshall, and I'm not confident in that game either.
So we have to win next week, obviously, if we want to keep this season as a positive from last year. The issue is still the run defense. That is the most glaring and obvious issue on the team. We cannot stop the run. The offensive line is obviously still a really big issue as well. Drones played well for his first start, like ever in college. He hasn't started a game in his life at the collegiate level. And it was his first week getting the majority of the first team reps because they were still working out Grant, seeing if his ankle was good enough to go. Obviously it wasn't. And we both agree. Thankfully it wasn't. Because I do think that Drones puts us in a better position to win. Kyron Drones had almost the same amount of rushing yards in this one game than our entire offense has had in the first 2 games combined by himself. So when you have a quarterback that can pose that much of a threat on the ground, it should open up the passing game because you bring an extra guy into the box. It opens up the secondary, and it just should make it a little bit easier. Now, once that was apparent, he threw a deep touchdown. He was making throws. But like his interception looked like a missed route to me. Like someone ran a wrong route because 2 of our receivers ended up in the same area, like within 2 yards of each other. That is obviously not the play. And if it is, we really need to consider replacing our offensive coordinator, which we've already talked about a little bit. But if you have 2 receivers ending up in the same area, there's more defenders there. It's a very highly likely chance that ball is getting picked off. Now, it was a super athletic play diving to the sideline. He tapped his toe. So credit to that defense, the defensive back there. But we do need to stick with Drones for the rest of the season. This is the first game we've had. Now I'm going to go to the positives a little bit, as little positives as there were. This is the first game we had with a running back over 4 yards per carry this entire year with Bashal Tutin. He had 4.1. Our defense, minus the running stuff, we forced a punt on 7 of 11 drives. So it's not like we were just letting them run all over us until the end when we let 2 huge runs go. The pass defense was great. We allowed 7 for 16 completions and only 46 yards in the air. Right now, we have statistically the 5th best pass defense based on yards per game in college football. The 5th best in the entire country. So, we have upside on this defense. And like you said, it was a 5-point game until there was 10 minutes left in the game. And then the defense allows 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, the reason I stated that 5th best passing defense based on yards per game is because part of that running defense still has to do with DBs, more specifically the safeties that are going to come down and support in the box when it's very clear that they're going to try to hammer it home on us based on our lack of ability to stop the run. It's just we have a lot of youth, a lot of inexperience, like a lot of our starters and guys that are coming in as second string guys just rotating throughout the game are underclassmen. They're sophomores and freshmen. So it is discouraging to watch us lose. I predicted a loss in this game. I thought we were going to lose anyways, but it's still never fun to watch a loss, especially after the game seemed to be, within striking distance of a win. I would rather see us use our young guys who don't have as much experience, roll with them. And if we lose because of their inexperience, that is much better to me than rolling out Grant Wells, who we've seen be inconsistent, and he's old. There's nothing more, in my opinion, he's a redshirt senior. There's nothing more to see from him. He's inconsistent, and he can be the reason that we are losing. And it's not because of inexperience. It's not because he doesn't know what's coming. He's been getting the majority of the first team reps since last spring, not this past spring, but the spring before when he first came over from Marshall. So, I'd rather see our young guys go out there, get reps. I've said it 10 times already. I'll say it 10 more times, I'm sure, by November. We're in a complete rebuild. I want 5 or 6 wins this year, and I will be okay with it because we had 3 wins last year. And, I've said it earlier as well. 4 of those losses we had were 1-possession games. So we are in position to win a lot of these games. And in the past, it seems like we're losing it because our experienced guys are still inconsistent and can't get the job done. And now we're just bringing in more youth, more, explosive talent that just doesn't know, the ins and outs. They don't know how to win games yet. So I'd rather, which is a super loser mentality to have, I'll accept that, but I'd rather lose games based on inexperience from players that are going to be good or great eventually, rather than have our old guys out there and lose just because they suck, So, I'm discouraged, obviously, but this game was in reach until we let it go. I predicted a loss, but it still hurts for the loss. I'm not going to keep ranting about it. I'll let you take it, but yeah, just not the best Saturday to watch Virginia Tech football.
It's just disappointing. It's so disappointing because every time I have high hopes for Virginia Tech, it just fall off. It's disappointing. I love going to the games and whatnot. It's great, but it's when you expect them to win, they lose. And I said it last year, and people thought it was crazy. Grant Wells ain't the damn answer. I said it last year. Despite him being new on the team, I said it last year. Grant Wells ain't the damn answer. The guy from Marshall, he went to Marshall. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? This ain't Sam Hartman. Oh, he was already good at Wake Forest. Look what he's doing for Notre Dame. And Tyler Buckner is garbage at Notre Dame. He goes to Alabama. That's what we're gonna talk about right now. Because Tech is going to probably lose again. But next game, Alabama versus South Florida. Oh, my God. They got quarterback problems again. Tyler Buckner is not good, ladies and gentlemen. Why did you think he transferred? Why do you think Marcus Freeman made glory and he got Sam Hartman? Because our quarterback wasn't good. We had a great defense. We had a great tight end. We had great receivers. Last year, our problem was the quarterback. He was the reason we couldn't beat Ohio State. And now with this game, you're telling me Alabama only scored 17 points? The defense did great. You held them to 3 points. What can you do? The quarterback. Oh, my God. Now, with this, ladies and gentlemen, should Jalen Monroe be the starter going forward? Because they played 2 quarterbacks. Tyler Buckner was 5 of 14 for 34 yards and got benched. And Ty Simpson was 5 for 9 for 73 yards. And neither of them threw a touchdown. The receivers only had – their leading receiver was Isaiah Bond on 4 receptions for 42 yards. Their run game was the reason why they won. They literally ran the ball between Wardell Williams and Jason McClellan. They both had combined 30 carries for about at least 200 yards, 203 yards combined. That's the only way Alabama knows. Alabama said, Nick Saban said, forget it. We're going to go old school and we're going to run the ball. That's great. But their quarterbacks is awful. I'm not going to get on Ty Simpson that much because, we hadn't even really seen him. We hadn't really, heard from the guy. Like I said, he's a freshman. So, okay, we get it. But Tyler Buckner, God, Jesus Christ. You go to Alabama because of Tommy Reese, and you tell me you're only 5 for 14 for 34 yards. Your QBR was 15. 15 QBR, and you're telling me you average 2.4 yards per pass play. Do you understand the Alabama offense? Is it difficult? What is going on with Alabama? Alabama's a good team, but should we start to panic now? Should we start to panic because they can't get the quarterback position right after 3 games?
A little bit, I think. I think it'd be very warranted to start panicking. You hit really all my talking points. But, Buckner, after a very shaky game against Texas, deserved to get benched, obviously. 5 for 14 is a terrible way to start a game where you're playing against a bunch of 2-stars. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And, I'm with you. Ty Simpson shouldn't have too much blame on him. I'm sure he didn't get damn near any first-team reps all week in practice and for most of the season at all. So I'm not going to hammer on him too much. But your offense can't have 10 completions for the entirety of a game when you've got 4- and 5-star receivers going against 2-star corners and safeties. That cannot be the case, dude. It just can't. The O-line is shaky, and I don't know where that came from at all because the O-line is supposed to be like the pride and joy of Alabama football, and they allowed 5 sacks. And, maybe that goes a little bit to the escapability of a quarterback, but going against a team like this, you shouldn't even be putting your quarterback in those positions to be trying to get out of sacks and getting sacked 5 times. That D-line, no discredit to them, still D1 football players, that D-line does not match up with Alabama's O-line at all. They should have been pancaking every dude on every single snap. And they weren't. They just weren't. They were getting manhandled, and it made no sense. Like you said, the running game is the only reason they won this game. 203 yards, 4.8 yards a carry. And the defense played as well as they can. What do you want them to just not give up 1 field goal? Like, I'm fine with giving up a field goal, but if they played any other team that is in an actual Power 5 conference like this, if they played like this against Virginia Tech, we could have had a chance to beat them, dude. They played garbage on offense. Garbage. And it just makes no sense to me at all. This is Nick Saban. This is a Nick Saban coach team. And the Alabama O-line is playing like garbage. Your quarterback play is very, very, very mediocre. Like, well, worse than mediocre with Buckner, but like after Simpson came in, he was just trying to manage it as well as he can. Obviously, he only threw the ball 9 times because they went back to the run game. But I mean, you covered all of it, and I'm just reiterating it. I mean, they played awful. And I think if they played a Power 5 school, damn near any other Power 5 school, they lose if they play to this level. This is just not it's not how you expect Alabama to play. And all credit in the world to USF, my fault, for playing as well as they did. But they knew going into this game they didn't have a chance to win. And I think in the fourth quarter, they were like, holy shit, we could win this game. Like we could do this. And obviously they didn't. The defense stepped up. But it was just shocking for me to see. And I was like, I do not like Alabama football. I don't like Alabama football. But I was like almost sad for them. I was like, what are we doing here? College football is at its best when Alabama is a good competitive team. Now, obviously, they went on that run and won all those titles and everything. But even if they're not winning titles, they're still in contention. And college football is better for it, having them in contention. It brings more viewers. It brings more money to the sport. Every other SEC team benefits from Bama doing well because everyone gets a share of that revenue. This game was not representative at all of what we've seen from Alabama football. And your question, if we should start to panic, if they can't get the quarterback situation figured out, hell yeah, we should start to panic. This team looked terrible, and I can't stress that enough.
You know why I can't shut it up? When you said something about when they play a Power 5 team, next week they play Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin versus Nick Saban. That's going to be a good one to watch while Colorado and Oregon play, which we'll preview those games tomorrow. But, ladies and gentlemen, Ole Miss is not a joke. Now, I understand Lane Kiffin is 3 things that make him mad or sad or sour. One of them was can't beat Nick Saban. That still hurts him to his soul, but Ole Miss, ladies and gentlemen, they're not a joke. They're not a joke. I understand they start off well and they lose like LSU or whatnot, but you play Ole Miss, it's not a joke. They play at home, but we'll see how that goes because Ole Miss is not a joke, and they have a way better quarterback, Jackson Dart, than all 3 Alabama quarterbacks. So we'll see who starts in this game. Nick Saban knows Lane Kiffin pretty well, so he probably will not name a starter until game day because they know each other well. He's not going to name a starting quarterback because the quarterback's not good. But the next game I want to talk about is college game day really put this as an upset. North Carolina and Minnesota. They really thought Minnesota was going to beat North Carolina. Now, they have a good defense and a great offense. Head coach P.J. Fleck done excellent turnaround the program, but I didn't see this game as an upset at all. I mean, North Carolina at home, they won 31-13. What did you think of this game? Because, I mean, I didn't see an upset at all. North Carolina was up 14-0. The closest it gotten was 13-21, and then all of a sudden North Carolina just took over. But Drake May did have some turnovers.
Yeah, that's been a trend this year so far, and that's not what you're expecting from what's supposed to be, and I still believe is the second best quarterback in college football. Now Shador and Michael Penix are coming up there to see something about that. But yeah, I mean, it was Lee and Kirk had Minnesota and Desmond and Pat had UNC. So, I mean, they were split down the middle. I think it should have been UNC across the board. I'm with you there. I didn't really see this game as too much of a chance of an upset. Now, I'm not saying that, PJ Fleck can't coach, and I don't think that Minnesota has a bad roster or anything. I just think that it was pretty evident going into the game that UNC was a better football team. And, I thought that I didn't think it was too much of a hot take to say that UNC was definitely going to win this game. I had them in a parlay. The only thing that lost in that parlay was Colorado not covering that damn spread, but we already talked about that. Yeah, I mean, Drake May, he threw the ball at a good clip. He was just under 75%, 414 yards. That's balling. 2 touchdowns, but those 2 picks, they just worry me a little bit going forward. But I mean, the defense, which has been the weak point of this team, has been the defense. Not just this year, last year as well. But the defense showed up. I mean, they allowed less than 50% from the Minnesota quarterback, only 133 yards and got a pick. The run defense was not the best. They allowed, Darius Taylor to get 138 yards on the ground, but it really didn't matter. The running game of UNC, they spread it out, 13 carries for Amarion Hampton, who we talked about last week, had over 200 yards. He only had 46 this week, but he got a touchdown. Drake May kept the ball 13 times. Sacks count as rushing yards in college football, which in my opinion is like the stupidest thing stat-wise that college football does. Sacks should not count as rushing yards. And British Brooks, who I honestly hadn't heard of before, 11 for 25 and a touchdown. So I'm assuming he was more short yardage use, not just, he couldn't run. Receiving, it was one guy. One guy from UNC, Nate McCullum, 15 receptions for 165 and a touchdown. That is a Puka Nacua game that we've been seeing in the NFL. 15 receptions for 165 is an insane stat line. His longest catch was 46. I don't really think there's too much to talk about. We both expected UNC to win this. They won it convincingly. The defense played well when it came to their secondary, which is in, the past few years, that has been their weak point, is the secondary, and they showed up today. So, I mean, credit to them. Minnesota will bounce back. They'll have a decent season. UNC still undefeated.
Next game and probably the last game that's probably worth talking about, or actually one more after this, is Wyoming versus Texas. I said it was going to be not a possible. I picked Texas, obviously, but this game was close until the fourth quarter. It was 10-10 after Texas beats Alabama. All the hype, all the victory. Oh, recruits come to Texas, and you struggled against Wyoming. Now, Wyoming is not a garbage team. Wyoming did score first in the game, but Texas pulled away in the fourth quarter with 3 touchdowns because it was 10-10 at the end of the third quarter, and they pulled away. So, I mean, I like the effort from Wyoming. They hung in there for 3 quarters, but Texas overmatched. I think Texas is 3-0 for the first time since 2012. Is Texas back? Are we concerned a little bit? Because, I understand every team competes in battles. I'm not crapping on Wyoming because Wyoming upset, Texas Tech and all the other stuff. Is Texas back?
No, they're not. Quinn Ewers is just hurting my brain, dude. So first week we talk about it. He was inconsistent until the end of that Rice game. Then he goes out and plays the best game of his life against Alabama. And then he throws 52% against Wyoming, 130 yards against Wyoming, who, like you just said, no shade towards Wyoming. They're a good team. They upset Texas Tech. This isn't Texas Tech. This is Texas. This is the 4th-ranked team in the country. What are we doing? Why are you throwing 52% and 130 yards against a team that I don't even remember what the spread was, but I'm sure it was like 20? Like, what is the deal? Why does he play down to the competition? It doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously, he couldn't win the job at Ohio State, or maybe he just saw a better opportunity at Texas. But if he plays like this in games where they should be just smoking the other team, it raises some real red flags to me. Like, I didn't think that it was a possibility that Arch came in this year after the Alabama game. I was like, all right, Quentin is here. He has arrived. He is that guy. Bro, 52% for 130? Like, he was lucky that the running back had 164 yards. Because, I mean, the defense did really the best they could. 10 points. 10 points to a team that is competitive against Power 5 schools is nothing to laugh at. And I mean, they allowed 110 yards on the ground to Wyoming's running back, but they kept the Wyoming quarterback to 136 yards. Who, by the way, besides the 2 touchdowns that Quinnen threw, the Wyoming quarterback had a better game than Quinnen Ewers did. Well over 50%, more passing yards. He did throw the pick, but against a great defense in Texas. So it just why is the Wyoming quarterback basically outplaying Quinnen Ewers, the first $1 million man of college football, the first prince of the NIL? Why? I don't know. And that's why I'm so adamant that I do not believe Texas is back. They're the 4th ranked team in the country. I think they finished the year 8th. I don't think they make the playoff. It's just they're going to lose one of these games because of Quinnen. They're going to.
You're right, because next week they play Baylor on the road on ABC prime time game at 7:30. If Baylor can get their quarterback back, I think they'll possibly beat them if their quarterback is back. They have Sean Robinson at the quarterback spot as of right now. But if their quarterback's back healthy, they'll play. They start somebody else. Baylor did have some bad losses, but this is a Big 12 rivalry game, and I think this will be interesting. Like I said, Texas has a 90% chance of winning that game, but I'm not sure because it's at Baylor. So we'll see how that goes. And then in 2 weeks from Texas, they play Oklahoma in the big rivalry. Now, I understand beat Oklahoma, but don't play down to your competition. They're the number 4 ranked team for a reason. And the last game we're going to cover for college football before we go to the NFL is Washington versus Michigan State. Because reports came out that Mel Tucker is actually officially fired after the calls and allegations. This game wasn't even close. It was 41-7. Washington was up 38-0 or 41-0. Yep. And Michigan State scored in the final 4th quarter with 5 minutes left of the game. This game wasn't close. Michael Phoenix Jr. is running up for the Heisman. If we're not talking Shedeur Sanders, he was 27-35, 473, and 4 touchdowns, which is insane. Washington has good receivers. They had Jalen Polk with 5 for 118 and a touchdown, and Rome Oduzzi for 8 for 180 yards receiving. So the Michigan State defense just fell off. By the way, they have a former head coach at Michigan State who was the former head coach before Mel Tucker. They became assistant. I think it's Mark D'Antoni or something like that. He was the assistant. Didn't really help. I think the Mel Tucker firing really put down the program. Is there any thoughts on this game? I mean, I had to mention it because of the Mel Tucker firing, but I mean, it was 41-7, dude. They were beating him so bad, this game wasn't even worth watching. It was a primetime game at 5 o'clock that wasn't worth watching.
Yeah. I mean, Michigan State scored their points against, I'm sure, Washington's 3rd stringers. I don't know how late Penix played because I didn't watch. I've looked at the score and I was like, all right, I'm not turning this game on. There's no point. So I don't know how long into the game he played, but I'm sure, only scoring 6 points he was out pretty they couldn't get anything going on the ground. Their leading receiver caught 1 ball, so for 61 yards. So good for him. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is just a gross game. I agree that Penix Jr. is definitely a top Heisman candidate. And he did nothing more but prove his case that he belongs in that conversation. And I really think that's the only thing to take away from this game is that he is for real. And he's going to be in that conversation all year. But everything going on with Michigan State football is just gross from the organizational level up top, obviously with the Mel Tucker firing, rightly so, of course. And then down to the play on the field. It's just bad all around. there's not really too much to say. I mean, if your leading receiver caught one ball, that's your leading receiver. There's not much to really say about this game at all.
No, it's not. But this is the not the final episode, excuse me. This is the end of the episode of college football. To recap most of the games that are important. Tomorrow we'll be recapping the games because there's a lot of primetime games for week 4 of college football, but we'll be going to the NFL recap, and the Dallas Cowboys somehow won, or not somehow, they won. They beat the Jets. You got the shirt on. The Ravens escaped the Bengals. Will be a good one. The Commanders, Sam Howell, Eric Bieniemy, he got that team rolling. The Patriots, oh Lord of mercy, I got a lot of things to say about my Patriots. I mean, we did good as far as not letting any deep balls happen. Great interception by Christian Gonzalez. It was great. But, I mean, the offense can't be having these damn slow starts. Like, we don't know what we want to do. But I'll rant on that next as well. So this is Lambo's for the Sports featuring the Big Brother. Oh, by the way, on the next episode, we'll be sharing our picks that we've been doing for the last 3 weeks. So we'll be sharing our picks, and we'll see who's going to win, who's going to lose. We mostly agree, but sometimes, basically on purpose, we'll pick a different team to make it look even. So we'll show you college football picks and the NFL picks. NFL, we do all the games. College football, we pick the matchups and certain stuff that matter. But that'll be on the next episode of Lambo for the Sports. We'll be catching you in the next 5 minutes. NFL recap.